get 10 years in, I'll be fine.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome to From the Halls of Justice. And we have with us the wonderful Commissioner Stephen Lowry, who serves us at the Los Angeles Superior Court. And you're still at Commonwealth.
I'm at the Commonwealth
Okay.
Court, CCW it's
All
called.
right. And we have with us the wonderful Ronald Litz, and he practices in family law. So this time around, the wonderful commissioner is going to be with us, and he's going to help me interview Mr. Litz a little bit.
Sounds good.
And I didn't get to ask, the commissioner has been presiding over family law, you said 9 years.
9 years now.
That's wonderful. And once again, you're so impressive.
Ah.
Oh, Mr. Litz, how long have you been in family law?
A mere 50 years.
50, my goodness.
So
That's wonderful, Ron.
You love what you do. That's the only way somebody can last 50 years like that. That's wonderful.
It has certainly changed.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to.
I've been doing it for 18 years now.
That's
And
amazing, too.
It feels like yesterday.
When I started, we had typewriters and real phones.
That's right.
And that was it.
No computers.
No cell phones, no computers.
Oh my God, this is wonderful.
No tweets and no twits.
And no tweets and twits. Well, Mr. Ronald Litz, how do you charge for your services? That's an interesting question.
Well, mostly, if you're handling a full case, it's an hourly rate and a retainer. If you're going to do a limited scope thing, such as they need you for this one motion, this one request for order, then you might do it as a flat fee. And then if you're doing a premarital agreement, also known as a prenuptial agreement, that is also generally done as a flat fee.
Okay. You know what just popped in my head, and I'm just going off that sometimes it can be very interesting. Women think like this. During the course of a conversation in family law, when clients call in or people call in and they want to know how do we get my spousal support or alimony, is there a difference between alimony and spousal support?
No, those are exactly the same.
Okay.
It's just another word for it.
Okay.
And nowadays
It's family support?
It's more, no,
Okay.
but nowadays they're more likely to use spousal support, but it means the same as alimony.
Okay. All right. And here. And then, oh, this is great. So, should I hide, and people they really do ask this, should I hide or move my assets to protect them?
Well, if the answer is no, but a husband and wife have a fiduciary duty to each other, which the law hopefully enforces, that you're not allowed to steal community assets from one another. And once a divorce is filed, unless there are specific reasons that are needed economically, you can't move or hide your separate property assets either. And there are things that you just can't sell or get rid of or give away or do.
Not your separate property assets either?
That's correct.
Okay, interesting.
And the reason that is, and Ron knows this, of course, is there's always a dispute over what is a separate property asset versus a community property asset. And you may think it's a separate property asset, but if you sell it or trade it or give it away, and then you're found that it was not a separate property asset, you're in big trouble.
Right.
Okay, all right. That's true. Judge Denner had been on the show, and he made the ruling about the lottery winning And so we always use that story to encourage people to be truthful. So,
And I loved Judge Denner. And I then had a Filipino housekeeper come to my office saying she wanted to hire me. And why do you want to hire me? Because I just won, I spent $1 and I won a $36 million the lottery. And in the Philippines, we don't believe in divorce. So I moved here 20 years ago. My husband read about me in the paper and says he filed for divorce here in California and he wants his half.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
But Denner was an amazing judge. He did not want to hear from you. I've read what you filed, so don't talk, and I'll make the decision. And then when attorneys would, or people who didn't have attorneys would try to talk, he'd be very upset.
Now, this is interesting. In your opinion, is it better for a case to settle or go to trial?
Well, obviously, financially, it's better for people to settle their cases. And another advantage, besides the fact that it will cost so much less than going to trial, is that when you settle, you are agreeing to all the terms in the divorce matter. When it goes to trial, the judge is determining who gets what and what's going to happen, and neither person will be fully happy with that.
Now, I have an interesting hypothetical, I'm going to go hypothetical question. OJ was on the other night talking about hypothetically
Yes.
if this happened. So, hypothetically speaking, what if there was an issue where there was a judgment, there was a settlement, and 10 years later, the wife found out that the husband had $1 million bank account in another country?
Yes.
Is there a time limit or frame that she should go back? I mean, this is 10 years later. Wouldn't the money be spent by now, or would it be
Well, you
newer
have
to
to,
go
you have
back?
to make the assumption that it still exists.
Okay.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be fighting over it. But
Okay.
so assume that it's still sitting in that bank account.
Or there's something still in it, okay.
And I believe what the law is on that is that if you had no reason to know about it, and you did not know about it, and somehow you just found out about it now, then a statute of limitations won't prevent you from going back into court and bringing up that subject and issue.
Really?
That's right.
No statute of limitations.
And of course, if
Interesting.
the other party knew about it and was hiding it, then you have even a much, much stronger case.
Wow. Okay.
Again, where Judge Denner or a judge has the right to either divide it in half or give the person who just found out about it 100%. And that was what he did in his case.
Okay. Oh, Lord. Okay, here you go. I got to remember that one. They sent the statement to her house after everything was signed off, 10 years later. Okay. Okay. Do you know the judge? And does it matter?
Well, I think it's a good thing to know about the judge. If you haven't been before the judge, to both look him up or her up, and also to get some of the comments from that sometimes lawyers post or people post, you know, and to see what he likes, what he's willing to do or not do. So it's obviously, if you know the judge pretty well, and again, I've been practicing for so long,
He knows all the judges.
Well, except they keep changing them.
They do, they do.
I mean, I used to know some of them extremely well. Go out to dinner with them, things like that. And, they have an obligation, if they're handling a case, if we have a close relationship, to mention it. I know Mr. Litz, I've gone to dinner with him. You have a right to excuse me if you want to. And when I've had some judges do that, foolishly, the people have said, no, I'm not excusing you. We can proceed. It's just been fine with me.
Oh my goodness. Good. Okay, so this is a good one because my spouse and I have an agreement. Can you just draft this up for us and get us through the process with the judge?
And I don't think that makes sense for a lawyer to do. That can be malpractice. You need to know the facts in the case. You need to see the income and expense declaration and asset and debt declaration, which a court can't even enter a judgment unless the parties have exchanged those documents. But I need to know what there is, what kind of assets, if their community is separate and why, to see whether the agreement is fair. Now, the fact that it may not be fair, one of the parties can still, hey, I just want this over.
Right.
I don't care. But I want to make sure that my client knows that.
All right. That's good. Know what you're giving up.
Yeah. Or on the other hand, also, I want my client to know that they're being overly generous.
If
I
they
have
are.
a matter right now where my client is being so overly generous.
Then that's because he cheated.
No,
No, just
no, just because he's such a nice, good, generous person.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. See, I always found, well, I'm just comparing now, when men cheat and there's a divorce, the first few months, they can be very generous because they feel guilty. However, if it drags on longer than 9 months going into a year, they start getting tired of the process, and then they start nitpicking more on the assets and what they actually own. Well, maybe I don't have that much anymore, but
And what I was really talking about on this person that I mentioned, it's not a divorce, it's a premarital agreement.
oh,
And being
they're in
extraordinarily
love.
generous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where he's giving away more than a court would order.
Yeah, we had one of those. So we had one, and what's really odd about it is that sometimes people just know things, and it was a prenup he gave her. They ended up getting a divorce, and he gave her well over $1 million, and he also left her in her will, and he ended up passing away, and his family came after her because he had left her all this money. So I don't know what it was in the marriage, but he did. He loved her and he gave it to her, and unfortunately he passed away. I like this one. If I leave a message for you, how quickly should I expect a call back?
And nowadays, with text messages and cell phones, at times clients will get annoyed at you. I left you a message over 10 minutes ago. I haven't heard back from you.
What about being in court, but you
Exactly.
have to go to court?
Or
Yeah.
a meeting with a client, or you're working on a project.
Right.
But you should definitely try and get back to the client within the day.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So anything, I used to hear a gentleman say anything between 8 to 12 hours. Because if he was in court or if he returned, so if it's I don't, maybe depending upon what the relationship is, how late you can call, but that was pretty safe.
But also, there are times when I'll be working at night. I'm home, but looking at the computer and seeing it, and I'll, send out a late night response, or over the weekend, I'll respond to a client who sends a question during the weekend.
Does it make a difference? Should I file right away? Does it make a difference who files first?
It doesn't matter who files first, but I think it's important to file. Generally, I would recommend filing quickly when you know that you're getting divorced. The one reason not to is if you can, again, if your marriage has been over 10 years, spousal support is called permanent, because the judge can't put on a cancellation date on it initially. You can come back into court some years after the judgment and try and get it modified. But so if you're married for 9 years, 9.5 years, and if you would be representing the person who's entitled to spousal support, I might well suggest delay it. But otherwise, if the parties know that they're going to be getting divorced, the longer you wait, the more the parties can screw around with the assets and do things that may not be beneficial to you.
Move them. Yes. No. Let's see. Can we stop a divorce if we decide to reconcile?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what we sometimes do nowadays with that is we'll enter into a postnuptial agreement to say what will happen if the parties do get divorced now, even though they have no intention of doing that. But that way they don't have to go through a full divorce again.
Okay. And how do you feel about mediation? What are your feelings about that?
Well, I think mediation and settlement conferences and hiring retired judges to handle the mediation and settlement conference can be very beneficial.
Okay.
Of course, between the two lawyers and the two parties, if one's an idiot, and that often happens, it can be the lawyer, it can be a party. You know, I'm not going to give up the silverware
Right.
or the dishes.
Right.
You know, I'm going to fight over that and spend, $30,000 so I can keep the silverware, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
But another big benefit in having a mediation settlement conference with a judge is that the judge is stating to you how I think you should settle it. If I were the judge handling this is what I would order. So you get to know that in advance. And they can tell the person, the position you're taking right now on that issue is really foolish. No judge is going to give you what you're requesting on that.
That's smart. That's very smart. Now, I like this. Will all of our stuff be split 50-50?
No. Well, firstly, again, you have to decide what is community property and what is separate property. And then some things can't be split. Whether it's a piece of furniture, or if it's the biggest issue is the house.
Right.
And the court, unless it's in foreclosure, unless there's a risk of being foreclosed, the court will not make an order before the trial as to who gets the house or what should be done with it, such as sold and divide the proceeds and give reimbursement for some things.
Unless it's in foreclosure. Interesting. Boy, just so many things to consider. And here it is. Yes, you answered that question. Is it a bad move for me or for the person to move out of the home? And is there anything wrong with moving out of the home during a pending divorce? Will that be abandonment?
Well, the reason why it is foolish, otherwise known as stupid, to move out of the home is because if there has been no physical abuse,
Right.
then a judge cannot and will not make a person move out of the home. However, if a person voluntarily moves out and then the other party runs into court and says, you know, I want an order that now I have exclusive use of the house, the judge is very likely to order that, as long as it was a voluntary move out.
Wow.
And then you lose the right, you have to pay your own rent or whatever wherever you're living. So it's a foolish thing to do.
Wow. For so many reasons, on so many levels, I'm loving this conversation. But and I just want to go ooh ooh ooh. Okay. So, oh God, they should have called you. Okay. And then, what types of alimony might be appropriate in my case?
Well, that is based upon the income of each party. For spousal support, which you like to call alimony.
I like spousal support, but alimony seems to be a favorite of people.
It's the same thing as I mentioned, but it's based upon the disamaster. It's the courts use a disamaster. It's a program, and lawyers use the disamaster. So if we believe the numbers that each party is putting in, it'll tell you exactly how much the support should be.
Okay.
And that's for spousal support. In connection with child support, you also use the disamaster until the final support, until the trial.
Okay.
And the court is not supposed to use it. Oh, and it's also based upon money that each party earns, but also the amount of time each party is going to have with the child.
Okay.
What percentage. But once you have the final divorce, whether it's the trial, the judge is not allowed to use the disamaster, and basically it'll be about 20% less than what temporary support would be.
Okay. All right. Now, we have 5 minutes, so I want to be sure to get this question in. I'm going to skip a couple of things, but I want to go to, do you allow me to negotiate directly with my spouse? How can I keep the cost of my divorce down?
Well, those are actually two different questions, but I think if you still have a relationship with your spouse, you know, where it's you just don't you just don't hate each other and want to make sure the other person gets nothing, and
Right.
you're just rude and nasty to the person.
Right.
But I think it is often good for the two parties to discuss certain issues that the attorneys are not able to work out. Or if an attorney is being too tough on a certain issue, for the parties to discuss it and try and resolve it. And again, you'll save a lot on attorney's fees.
Well, then that's the time, I believe, when you have to make sure that everybody is really on the same page, because that's when writing something down might be a good idea. Because if you get one person who's saying, well, Harold said that he's agreeable to this, and he's going to give me all the shoes in the closet and everything else in exchange for he's going to give me, if I move, an additional $20,000 to leave him alone with this, and he gets to keep, you know, the books that the mother gave. Just write it down.
Absolutely.
Because by the time I get back to the attorney and I say, this is what we agreed upon, and then my attorney communicates with them, and they say, well, this is what they agreed upon. Is that so? And then Harold's attorney comes back and goes,
Absolutely
no way.
not. Yes, right.
Not only
We have
write it,
that all the
not only
time.
write it down, but both of you initial it and
Yes.
date it.
Okay.
And sign it, yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Now I think this changes a lot of things. If you're the victim of domestic violence, how does that change your case?
Dramatically.
Yes.
The person who has committed domestic violence is not allowed to receive spousal support. So that can be a good thing.
Wow.
But also, domestic violence can be very, very bad, and so often the women don't do anything about it. I don't understand that. You know, they wait till they're beat up, 5 times or something before they'll go forward.
That's a shame.
Speaking
Well-
of the O.J. case.
No.
It's often the case, though, that women feel that
Hypothetically.
they have no other source of income, and if they have the children and they're over a barrel, they will frequently just keep their mouth shut and do nothing and just take what they can get. I found that to be very frequent.
Well,
That's
I
too
am
bad.
not an advocate of violence of any kind, but that's when you watch Tyler Perry's movies and you go with Medea's hot grits theory. So something in the kitchen has got to be handy. So I don't know. But I don't believe in violence. It's always better to get out, walk away, just take the kids with you, get everybody and just get out of there. Well, I would like to say I have really enjoyed this, and I've learned several things, and I made my notes. And on a close here, for Mr. Litz, I would like to do one more tidbit with Commissioner Lowry. So, what do you think about number 22? I love this. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but it's morally treasonable to the American public. Theodore Roosevelt.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a very strong president with very strong opinions, and he did an interesting thing. He took the office after McKinley was killed, and McKinley was killed very shortly after he had been elected. So Roosevelt served 3 years of McKinley's term, and then he ran again and served a 4-year term. Everyone wanted him to go ahead and run for still a second term on his own, but he felt it was wrong because he would have 11 years then in, and up till that time, no one had ever served beyond 8 years. So he declined going ahead and running at that time, went away and did some crazy things, went to South America, went to various places, came back and then ran again, but on a new party, the Bull Moose Party, but he did not win at that time. He lost when he tried to go for another term. But Roosevelt was a very, very strong-willed fellow, and of course, he and Franklin Roosevelt were cousins. Roosevelt had opinions that we could do with some today that he had that are not around at present.
And they had some good wives who helped them.
Strong
Yay.
wives, very strong
Good
wives.
first ladies.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us on From the Halls of Justice. I could do a month of shows between you and Mr. Litz. This is wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
Join us next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. From the Halls of Justice.
Now, when does it come on? When can we see this wonderful thing?
Well, we schedule